My parents handed my sister a check for $100,000 to help her buy a house. Then they looked straight at me and said, "You're the failure." No lowering their voices. No pause. Just a final judgment dropped casually between bites of pot roast. My brother-in-law lifted his wine glass like it was a toast. My mom smiled, calm and comfortable, as if nothing strange had just happened. I remember my fork slipping from my hand and clattering against the plate, the noise louder than the silence that followed. No one stopped me when I stood up. No one asked where I was going. That night, I didn't cry. I packed everything I owned into the trunk of my car and drove until the road disappeared into darkness. 2 years later, they finally learned what silence can build and what it can destroy. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're listening from, so I know I'm not alone out there. And when you've heard my whole story, tell me honestly what you would have done if you were in my place. People always said our family looked perfect, matching sweaters at Christmas, polite smiles in church photos, the kind of household neighbors secretly envied. What they never saw was who ironed those sweaters, who cleaned the dishes after those picture-perfect dinners, who stayed quiet just to keep the peace. That was me. I was the steady one, the fixer, the glue nobody noticed until it cracked. My sister Veronica was the star, straight A's, homecoming queen, full scholarship to UCLA. Dad filmed every award ceremony like she was walking a red carpet. When I brought home B's, he'd shake his head and say, "You're not applying yourself." When I became president of the art club, Mom smiled tight and said, "That's cute." When Veronica turned 16, she got a shiny blue car with a big bow on top. For my birthday, we went to Applebee's, and I got a $50 gift card. "Be grateful," Mom said, fixing my hair before taking a picture. The camera flashed, but I blinked too late. That photo still sits on their mantle. Proof I existed, just not proof of how it felt. College made everything clearer, and worse. Veronica's tuition was fully covered. Mine wasn't covered at all. When I asked for help, Dad sliced roast beef slowly, like a judge delivering a sentence. "We're not paying for a state school." Mom followed up softly. "State schools are for kids who didn't aim high enough." I swallowed both sentences and signed the loan papers myself. 6.8%. Every dollar felt like a bruise. I worked 2 jobs to survive. Library mornings before sunrise. A diner at night until my feet burned. Winter split my hands open. When pneumonia hit, I called home shaking and barely able to breathe. Dad said I needed better time management. Mom asked if I was taking vitamins. I hung up and stared at my phone until the screen went dark. Then there was a knock. Mrs. Chen, our neighbor from the next building, stood there holding soup and a small envelope. "You're not alone," she said, pressing it into my hand. Inside was a $500 check. It wasn't the money that broke me. It was the kindness. I cried until the soup went cold. From that moment on, I started paying attention to who actually showed up. Later, therapy gave it a name: protective expectations. I learned to expect absence so it wouldn't crush me. When graduation day came, my family didn't. I watched other parents holding flowers, cameras flashing. I held my degree alone and whispered, "I made it anyway." That night, I rode the bus home, my diploma still warm in its sleeve. My phone buzzed with a new photo from Veronica. Her engagement ring sparkled under fairy lights. The caption said, "Dreams do come true." I liked the post. Then I turned off notifications because deep down, I knew dreams do come true, just not the ones they picked for me. After graduation, life got quieter, but not peaceful. The silence felt heavy, like a house still standing after a fire. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, where the hum of dryers replaced conversation. I worked long hours as a junior designer, saving every paycheck like proof I could survive without them. I told myself I was fine, independent, unbothered. But some nights, I woke up at 3 in the morning, my phone glowing on the nightstand, scrolling through their photos. Sunday dinners, bridal showers, vacations I wasn't invited to. Their smiles looked permanent. My absence looked intentional. When the wedding invitation finally came, it didn't come from them. It came from the event planner. An automated email in gold cursive that said, "You're cordially invited." They even spelled my name wrong. I stared at it for a full minute before closing my laptop. That was the night I booked my first therapy session. Dr. Singh had kind eyes and a voice like calm water. She listened as I explained my family, how love always came with conditions, how approval felt like oxygen I had to earn. When I finished, she asked one simple question. Have you ever tried not performing for it? That question followed me home. It echoed while I folded laundry, while I brushed my teeth, while I stared at the blinking voicemail light. Then Mom's voice filled the room. Call us back, honey. Don't be stubborn. I didn't call back. Days slid into weeks. My phone buzzed with reminders from therapy. Boundaries aren't walls, the message said. They're doors you decide when to open. I practiced saying no in the bathroom mirror. At first, it came out stiff and uncomfortable, then steadier. The word felt strange in my mouth, almost risky, like I was breaking some unspoken rule. When Christmas arrived, I sent nothing. No gifts, no messages. The first day came with guilt sitting heavy on my chest. The second day felt lighter. By the third, I realized I could breathe without waiting for permission. Veronica's wedding happened without me. Photos flooded social media. Her lace dress, my parents' glowing faces, the caption reading, "Family forever." I looked at it from my tiny balcony while city noise swelled below. A bee hovered near a dying plant on the railing, then drifted away. I remember thinking, even bees know where not to land. A week later, Mom left another voicemail. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I deleted it without replaying it. That night, I shut off my ringer, sat by the window, and let the quiet settle into the space they used to fill. That's when I stopped reaching out completely. No calls, no texts, no visits, no explanations. Silence became my new language, cold, steady, intentional. I didn't know it then, but that silence would turn into the loudest thing I'd ever build. It didn't fix everything, but it gave me space to notice the cracks. Without their voices crowding my thoughts, I started hearing my own. Work turned into a rhythm I could rely on. Days blurred into sketches, deadlines, and too much late-night coffee. I wasn't thriving yet, but I wasn't falling apart either. Every finished project paid a bill and proved inch by inch that I could live without their approval. Still, the ache stayed. Holidays felt like standing outside a warm house, watching light spill through windows I wasn't welcome in. In February, pneumonia came back. I remember the harsh fluorescent lights of urgent care and the steady beep of machines. I lay there shaking, scrolling through my contacts, my thumb hovering over Mom's name. It stopped just short. Then I locked the screen. I didn't need another reminder of who wouldn't show up. When I got home, a note was taped to my door. Soup inside. Chen. Mrs. Chen had found me again. She handed me a thermos and said, "Rest. The world can wait." Her kindness landed harder than any apology I'd ever chased. By spring, I was back on my feet and restless. I didn't want a life that felt like holding my breath anymore. Therapy helped me put words to it. I was done surviving. I wanted to build something. I started browsing listings, cheap land up north, far enough away to hear my own thoughts, places people drove past without a second glance, places no one could take from me. 3 months later, I signed papers for 40 acres of tired soil and a house with more holes than windows. Everyone else would have seen a disaster. I saw room to grow. The first nights were rough. No heat, no Wi-Fi, just wind rattling the siding while I cursed leaky pipes. But for the first time, every problem was mine to fix. I learned how to seal drafts with plastic, patch drywall from YouTube tutorials, and keep bees alive through freezing nights. Tom, my neighbor across the ridge, showed up one morning holding coffee and smiling. "You working the land?" he asked, "or letting it work you?" I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Weekends turned into rituals, mud on my hands, sawdust in my hair, sunburn across my neck. Slowly, lavender pushed through the stubborn dirt, shy green rose turning purple. I started journaling everything, mistakes, small wins, first blooms. The pages filled like proof that something new was happening. One night, I stood in the doorway of the half-finished farmhouse, looking out over the fields under a full moon. My breath fogged in the cold, but inside me, something had finally settled. I'd spent years begging to belong. Now I was building it with my own hands. And as the seasons shifted, I realized I hadn't just gone quiet. I'd gone sovereign. Spring came early that year. The lavender bloomed in uneven waves of soft purple, moving with the wind. The silence sounded different now, less hollow, more earned. The bees came back, steady and loyal, and I worked alongside them in the fields. I didn't know it yet, but that peace was about to be disturbed. It started with a text from an unknown number. "Ava, Is this really your place? I didn't reply. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Dad. I stared at the screen long enough to hear the voicemail kick in. His voice sounded casual, too smooth. Your sister drove past a property in Sonoma today. Big field, tin roof, lavender everywhere. Is that yours? I wiped the dirt from my hands and looked out at the horizon. It is, I said when I finally called back. The line went quiet. The kind of pause where someone's deciding which version of themselves to use next. It's impressive, he said. We didn't realize you were doing this well. Maybe we could help you expand, turn it into something bigger. I've got contacts, investors. I stopped him mid-sentence. No, Dad, you already had your chance. He let out a short laugh, low and dismissive. Don't be stubborn. We're family. That word, family, hit like a stone. Family doesn't call you a failure and then fund your replacement, I said quietly. Then I hung up before he could answer. 2 days later, an email showed up. Subject line, investment proposal. I didn't open it. I archived it. A week passed. The lavender kept growing, unbothered by any of it. Then one afternoon, a courier truck crawled up the dirt road, dust spiraling behind it. The driver handed me a manila envelope and asked for a signature. Inside was a personal check for $100,000. On the memo line, for your college. Folded inside was a short note in my mother's looping handwriting. We were too hard on you. This is our way of making things right. I sat there with it for 10 minutes. No shaking, no tears, just quiet. Then I stood up, grabbed my scissors, and cut the check into neat strips, thin as confetti. I placed the pieces into another envelope and wrote one sentence in blue ink. You can't buy forgiveness. I mailed it back certified. 3 days later, Dad showed up at my gate. The cameras caught him before I did. Pressed khakis, polished shoes, that weekend version of himself he saved for appearances. He waved at the lens like I was still a kid waiting for approval. I pressed the intercom. Leave. I just need 5 minutes, he said. His voice cracked in places it never used to. I was wrong, Ava. Please, I want to talk. You had 26 years, I said. You didn't use them well. He tried the old parental tone. We're your parents. We made mistakes, but parents get access. I almost laughed. Access is earned, I said, not assumed, and not purchased. The silence that followed felt heavy, then strangely light. Can't we move past this? He asked, staring straight into the camera. His eyes were red at the edges, asking for something he didn't know how to name. Forgive us, he whispered. I can, I said evenly, but forgiveness isn't reconciliation. The gate motor hummed and began to close, slow and mechanical. He didn't move until the panels met in the middle, cutting the view clean in half. The camera blinked once, then went still. I logged the visit in a notebook. Time, date, weather. Evidence lasts longer than memory when storms come back. Then I returned to the fields. Work held me better than nostalgia ever could. That night, I watched the footage again. The way he stood there, unsure who he was without control. The way I didn't flinch. I realized something no therapy session had ever put into words. Peace doesn't come from apologies. It survives through boundaries. A week later, another envelope arrived. No note this time. Just the same amount, voided. Maybe surrender, maybe guilt. I shredded it without opening it all the way. The season kept moving. The lavender darkened. The bees multiplied. The land stopped feeling borrowed and started feeling claimed. One morning, while checking the hives, I saw Veronica's car idling at the end of the road. She didn't pull in, just sat there. From where I stood, her face looked small behind the glass. She lifted her phone like she was taking a picture, maybe proof for our parents that I existed outside their version of the story. I didn't wave, I didn't move. I let her look as long as she wanted. That afternoon, Dad called again. Your sister says the property might be worth over $2 million. Is that true? That's what the appraisal says. He went quiet. I could hear him breathing. Then came the familiar pivot, concern dressed up as strategy. You've built something incredible, but you can't manage all of this alone. Let us help you grow it. You'll need experience, real guidance this time. I thought of every lecture, every check withheld, every smirk after my effort. I thought of the kid who once begged for a seat at their table. Then I said it, clean and final. No, I repeated, hearing Dr. Singh's voice in my head. No is a complete sentence. For the first time, there was no guilt in the word, only weight. When I hung up, the fields hummed with bees. The wind carried lavender through the open windows. Somewhere beyond the gate, a car engine started, then faded. That night, I walked the perimeter with a flashlight, following the fence line I'd built myself. Every post solid, every wire tight. Boundaries, physical and otherwise, holding strong. They once called me a failure, but that failure built something that didn't need their approval. 2 years of silence had turned into soil, roots, bloom. And under the moonlight brushing across the fields, I realized they'd been right about one thing. I didn't belong to their world anymore. I had built my own. Summer came in hot and full. Summer came in hot and full. The kind of heat that presses into your shoulders and dares you to slow down. I woke before sunrise most days, boots by the door, coffee cooling while the fields waited. The lavender was thick now, heavy with scent, bees weaving between rows like they owned the place. In a way, they did. We'd grown into the land together. Word started to travel. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that moves through appraisers, supply shops, county offices. A local paper ran a short feature. From Neglect to Bloom, a one-person farm revival. They spelled my name right. That mattered more than I expected. Then the calls started. Small ones at first. Boutique soap makers. A wedding planner asking about bundles. A cafe owner who wanted to talk wholesale. I said yes when it felt right. I said no when it didn't. Each decision was mine alone, and the weight of that felt good. Honest. One afternoon, Tom leaned against the fence, squinting at the horizon. "You're getting noticed," he said. Not a warning, just a fact. "I know," I told him. He nodded once. "Just remember, attention isn't the same as safety." I thought about that later, lying awake with the windows open, listening to insects hum. Safety had always been conditional in my life, earned, revoked. This was different. This was chosen. In August, a letter arrived with a return address I didn't recognize. Inside was a typed note from a regional developer. Compliments, numbers, interest. They wanted to buy. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer I labeled "Not Yet." That same week, Mom tried again. No voicemail, just a text. "We're worried about you." I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. Worry had never looked like support in my house. The county fair rolled in toward the end of summer. I didn't plan to go. Crowds still made me uneasy. But a vendor backed out last minute and someone mentioned my name. I found myself setting up a small table under a canvas tent, jars of dried lavender stacked neatly, a handwritten sign taped to the front. People stopped, asked questions, complimented the smell. One woman said, "You can tell this was grown by someone patient." I smiled and didn't explain how patience sometimes comes from nowhere else to go. Halfway through the afternoon, I felt it, that shift in the air. The sense of being watched. I turned and saw Dad standing near the lemonade stand, hands in his pockets, scanning the booths like he was casing a place he used to own. He didn't approach, didn't wave, just stood there, absorbing. I kept talking to a customer, made the sale, counted the change twice. When I looked again, he was gone. That night I checked the cameras. Nothing, no gate activity, no drive-by. Still, I slept light. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived, legal-looking, thick. Inside was a formal request to meet, not from my parents, from a family trust I didn't know existed. My name was listed. Beneficiary. Partial. Conditional. Therapy taught me to notice what my body does before my mind catches up. My jaw locked. My stomach went cold. Old reflexes, waking up. I didn't respond. Instead, I called a lawyer. Local. Calm. Recommended by Tom. She listened, asked careful questions, then said, "You don't owe anyone access to what you built." Hearing it out loud felt like reinforcement steel poured into my spine. September softened the heat. The first cool nights came through the windows. I started sleeping deeper, dreaming less. The farm felt settled, like it trusted me now. Then Veronica showed up again. This time she drove past the gate and parked just outside it. She got out, walked the fence line slowly. No phone, no car idling, just her, hands folded, waiting. I watched from the porch for a long time. Finally, I pressed the intercom. "What do you want?" She flinched at the sound of my voice. I wanted to see it. See you. You've seen enough, I said. She nodded, tears shining but not falling. They don't talk about you the way they used to. That's not my problem. I know, she said quickly. I just thought you should know. I didn't answer. She stood there another minute, then walked back to her car, drove away without looking back. That night, I wrote in my journal longer than usual. Not about them, about the land, about the way the bees had learned the new hive, about how silence no longer felt like punishment. It felt like choice. October brought frost warnings and another envelope. This one handwritten. From Dad. I didn't open it. I burned it in the fire pit and watched the smoke disappear into the dark. Here's the thing they never tell you about cutting contact. The world doesn't end. It expands. Slowly. Carefully. Like trust. By the time the first real cold set in, I had contracts signed for next spring. Modest. Sustainable. Mine. I stood at the edge of the field one evening, watching the last light fade, and realized something quiet and final. They weren't circling anymore. They were watching from a distance, unsure where the edges were. And for the first time in my life, the edges were mine to define. But peace has a way of testing itself, and winter was coming.